You are standing in your kitchen, or perhaps sitting at your desk late at night, and you are looking at a headline. Maybe it's about a 22-year-old tech founder who just sold their third company, or a teenage prodigy winning a global prize. And in that moment, a very specific and heavy internal prosecutor wakes up inside your mind. It starts listing the evidence against you. It points to the fact that you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. It reminds you of the career path you didn't take, the language you never finished learning, or the business you never started. You feel a sudden, sharp twinge of clock anxiety, the feeling that your brain's learning window has slammed shut. You've been told for decades that your mind is in a state of slow, inevitable decline, that you're over the hill, and that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. This is the myth of the peak. The idea that human potential is a bell curve that tops out at 25 and then slides into a cognitive abyss. If you have spent your recent years apologizing for your age or feeling like a dilettante who missed the boat, I want to start today by telling you that the diagnosis you've been given is fundamentally wrong. You are not broken, and you are certainly not a mistake. You are simply making a fundamental error in how you define your own cognitive power. Today we are going to dismantle the late bloomer shame using the hard science of neuroplasticity. We are going to look at why your brain after 40 isn't actually slower. It's just undergoing an active remodeling into a high-performance system that a 20-year-old simply doesn't have the hardware to run yet. We aren't just talking about coping with age, we are talking about weaponizing it. To understand your late bloomer advantage, we have to step away from the cultural myths and look at your biology. Most of us view our minds through a lens of decline because we focus on the wrong metric. We focus on fluid intelligence, dollar GF dollar. Think of fluid intelligence as your brain's raw processing speed, the RAM of your computer. It's the ability to reason quickly and think abstractly, independent of past knowledge. It's how fast you can solve a brand new puzzle or juggle 10 different Slack pings at once. And yes, the research is clear. This processing speed does begin a gradual decline as we age. If your brain were a camera, the 20-year-old version was a fast shutter speed sports camera. It could capture movement instantly, but it often lacked depth, context, and soul. But as you cross into your 40s and 50s, your brain undergoes a profound architectural shift toward crystallized intelligence, dollar GC dollar. This is your library of knowledge. It is your lifetime of experience, your understanding of complex social dynamics, and your ability to see patterns where others see chaos. Crystallized intelligence does not decline. In fact, it continues to grow and become more interconnected well into your 70s and 80s. Imagine a young sapling versus an ancient oak. The sapling grows fast, but the oak has a root system that spans the entire forest. A classic study on professional typists reveals this power perfectly. Researchers compared 20-year-old typists with 50-year-old typists. They found that the older typists were just as fast and accurate as the younger ones. Even though their raw finger tapping speed, their fluid motor power was physically slower. How did they do it? They used their crystallized library to look further ahead in the text. While the 20-year-old was reacting to one word at a time, the 50-year-old was scanning blocks of text 10 words ahead. Anticipating the flow, they used wisdom to compensate for speed. When you try to learn a new skill today using the brute force strategy of a 20-year-old, you get frustrated because you're trying to drive on the highway in first gear. You are working much harder than you need to because you aren't using your upgraded hardware. You are trying to be a fast camera when you have been upgraded to a high-resolution satellite. Why does learning a new language or complex software feel heavier now than it did in college? You might think it's because your brain is less plastic, but neuroscience suggests something much more interesting: compensatory scaffolding. In the world of neurobiology, this is known as the stack model, scaffolding theory of aging and cognition. If you look at an fMRI scan of a younger brain performing a task, one specific localized area lights up. It's efficient, but it's thin. It's a specialist. But when an older brain performs that same task, something miraculous happens. It doesn't just use that one area. It recruits reinforcements from the opposite hemisphere and other neural networks. This is called bihemispheric recruitment. Your brain is automatically reorganizing itself to build a supportive structure, a scaffold, to solve the problem. This recruitment of extra networks is why learning feels like it takes more effort. It literally requires more metabolic energy. You aren't struggling because you can't learn. You are feeling the heat of your brain building a massive interconnected bridge. This effort is the mechanism of maintenance. By challenging these scaffolds, you are keeping them strong. Think of it like this. A 20-year-old's brain is a paved 2-lane road. It's fast for cars, but it's easily blocked. Your brain at 50 is a complex multi-level interchange. It takes more energy to navigate, but it can handle vastly more complex traffic from multiple directions at once. The brain might shrink slightly in volume as we age, but its ability to build these new functional connections, its plasticity, remains stable. You have the hardware, you just need a better manual for how to operate it in what researchers call a wicked learning environment, an environment where rules are unclear and patterns are hard to see. That is where the mature brain thrives. The biggest barrier for the late bloomer isn't learning the new, it's unlearning the old. For decades, you have been driving the same mental routes. Your habits, professional skills, and worldview are like deeply carved canyons in your mind. These are called long-term potentiation pathways. They are incredibly strong. When you try to learn something new, especially if it's similar to something you already know, your brain's first instinct is to slide back into that old comfortable path. Clinicians call this proactive interference. It's the reason why, if you've been a manager for 20 years and tried to learn a modern flat hierarchy leadership style, your brain keeps defaulting to the old command and control settings. You aren't slow, you are clobbered by your own expertise. This frustration often leads to dabbler's guilt, that feeling that you're flaky because you quit when things get hard. But you aren't lacking grit. Your willpower muscle, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, AMCC, is just facing a much heavier weight than it used to. The AMCC is the part of the brain that grows when we do things we don't want to do. For a 20-year-old, everything is new, so their AMCC is constantly engaged. For you, so much is autopilot that your AMCC has become slightly deconditioned. To overcome this, we need to stop being dandelions who try to grow in any random crack in the sidewalk, and start being orchids who build a specific cognitive greenhouse for their curiosity. We have to make the environment conducive to new growth by intentionally disrupting the old paths. So, how do you actually build an M-shaped career or a polymathic life after 40? You don't do it by acting like a college student. You use a framework I call the pillar and the playground. Part 1, the pillar, 70% focus. This is your serial mastery project. You pick one major skill. Maybe it's Python coding, high-level negotiation, or landscape architecture. And you commit to it for a season of 6 to 18 months. In the pillar, you don't use brute force. You use relational learning. You never learn a fact in isolation. You anchor it to your crystallized intelligence. If you're learning business strategy, you map it onto a historical event or a family dynamic you know by heart. If you're learning to code, you compare functions to the verbs in the languages you already speak. You use your library of metaphors to bypass the need for raw speed. This is meaning-based learning, and for the mature brain, it is 10x more effective than rote memorization. Part 2, the playground, 30% focus. To fix the unlearning problem and boost your cognitive agility, you must become a total beginner again in a way that feels safe. You choose 2 additional skills that are completely unrelated to your pillar and to each other. If your pillar is logical, like accounting, your playground must be physical or sensory, like salsa dancing or watercolor painting. The key is that these skills must be dissimilar. Why? Because learning 3 unrelated things simultaneously forces your brain back into a childlike state of mental flexibility. This is known as cross-domain plasticity. Research by Dr. Rachel Wu showed that older adults who learned 3 new distinct skills for just 3 months saw their processing speed and working memory jump to levels comparable to people 30 years younger. The playground isn't about mastery, it's about neurological novelty. It's about shaking the snow globe of your mind so the old habits don't get a chance to settle. It's the reset button for your neuroplasticity. The reason you are actually better at starting now than you were at 20 is a cognitive tool called FAR transfer. A specialist, the I-shaped person, uses near transfer, applying a skill to a very similar problem. For example, a Java programmer learning C++. But as a late bloomer, with a lifetime of seemingly random interests, you can do something magical. You can see the underlying structure in one field and apply it to a completely different one. Consider the polymathic edge. A musician who understands harmony might look at a complex piece of software code and see a more elegant, rhythmic way to structure it. Someone who has spent 20 years in garden design might look at an organizational chart and realize that the root system of the company, the culture, is what's actually broken, not the branches. This is the ability to see the music, not just the notes. All those unfinished hobbies you feel guilty about, they aren't a graveyard of failures. They are the library of metaphors that will allow you to create breakthrough insights that a hyper-specialized 20-year-old will never see. In a world of AI and hyper-specialization, the person who can connect dots across domains is the most valuable person in the room. Your wasted time is actually your greatest competitive advantage. Finally, we must respect the physical limits of the aging brain. We have to be honest. Your working memory, your internal workbench, has likely gotten a little smaller. You can't hold as many variables in your head at once as you could at 19. The solution isn't to try harder. The solution is to get it out of your head. Trying to keep all your ideas in your working memory is a recipe for systemic overload. You need an external anchor for your curiosity. I recommend a second brain system like the Zettelkasten. When you get fascinated with a topic for a week, don't just consume it. Write down one idea on a digital card in Notion, Obsidian, or even a physical index card. Then, and this is the vital part, link it to something else you already know. This concept in biology reminds me of how I used to manage the sales team in 2012. This turns your scattered interests into a massive, externalized web of knowledge. Over time, this web grows so dense that it eventually writes the book for you. It allows you to let go of the novice high dopamine chase and move into the deep, rewarding work of a polymath. You stop being a consumer and start being an architect. The internal prosecutor wants you to believe that you are a dash-shaped person, a mile wide and an inch deep. It wants you to feel the familiar fog of shame every time you pick up a new book or start a new course. But the science of the 50-plus brain tells a different story. This is not a story of decline. It is a story of active remodeling. You are not a house falling into disrepair. You are a classic building being retrofitted with fiber optic cables and a deeper foundation. You have the high-resolution radar of a super sensor combined with the crystallized wisdom of a life well lived. You aren't late. You are just arriving with a better library. The world doesn't need more 22-year-olds who can move fast and break things. It needs 50-year-olds who can move with intention and fix things. To help you map out this new chapter, I've created a new free PDF guide called the Late Bloomers Neuro Protocol. It includes a pillar and playground audit tool, a sensory diet for focus, and the relational learning templates we discussed today. You can download it using the link in the description. If this reframe brought you even a small amount of hope, subscribe to Unordinary Mind. We are building a map for the orchid brain, no matter when you decide to bloom. And if you're struggling with the urge to quit because the initial dopamine has faded, watch our video on the 15% push right here. It will help you train that AMCC muscle to power through the long plateau.